This is the Thursday, January 14th meeting of the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals. Could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Vig?
Here.
Mr. Cars?
Here.
Mr. Ron?
Here.
Ms. Iker?
Here.
Ms. Dole?
Here.
Ms. McKay?
Here.
Mr. Ayers?
Here.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda, we have minutes, 3 sets of minutes, and a couple of those minutes are from 2010, which are prior to some of the board members being on this board. However, all board members are allowed to vote on approval of the minutes, regardless of their attendance of the board on the board at that time. So with that, we need to approve the minutes. Mr. Vig, you've moved to approve the minutes.
Move to approve.
Thank you. And Ms. Dole?
Second it.
Thank you. Is there any opposition to approval of the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved. Next item on the agenda, special order of business, disclosures. Do we have any disclosures this evening? Yes, Mr. Vig.
Mr. Chairman, I was not in attendance at the meeting on October 8th. However, I did listen to the recording for case number 2015-0075. Did not listen to the other 2 cases.
Thank you, Mr. Vig. So you will be able to vote on resolution 2015-008.
That's correct.
Thank you. Are there any other disclosures? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Resolutions for approval. Maybe just for clarity, Mr. Vig has already noted which, okay, he's noted which resolutions he would be able to vote for. Are there any that's on the consent agenda? So I would accept a motion to approve. Thank you, Ms. McKay. Mr. Ron, you've seconded?
That's correct.
Thank you. Are there any resolutions anyone wishes to pull from the consent agenda? Seeing none, we need to vote on this. Is there any objection to approval of the consent agenda? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Moving on, we have no appearance requests, unfinished business. That brings us to our regular agenda. Item G2A of the agenda is 2015-0103, a request for a 1-year time extension. One-year time extension of a zoning variance to allow for completion of an updated as-built survey in order to satisfy condition number 2 on Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals Resolution 2015-009. Could staff provide us with a presentation and background on the need for this time extension?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The petitioner has requested this 1-year time extension in order to complete required improvements to the property, things like usable yard. They need to remove some wrap and replace with topsoil and seed. We don't have any objection to allowing them through this summer to complete that.
I do have a question. I don't recall seeing a time extension before come before us. Could you maybe explain why? Is this case any different than other ones, or why we're seeing this one and not others?
We haven't seen others before. The code doesn't address time extensions on zoning variants, but we have consulted with legal, and they've said that it shouldn't be a problem to allow this extension.
Excuse me, you'll have an opportunity to. Okay, are there any questions of staff by the board? Excuse me, sir, are you, you're going to need to speak into the microphone so we can record it. Could you state and spell your name for the record, please?
Yes, my name is Steve Sautner, and that's S-A-U-T-N-E-R, first name S-T-E-V-E.
And just 1 minute, Mr. Sautner. Mr. Odell?
Point of order. I just want to bring up, Mr. Chair, that this is not a public hearing. It was not advertised as such.
Understood.
Okay.
And thank you, Mr. Odell. However, I do believe that if it is the applicant, we can ask questions of them.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Odell. And are you the petitioner, sir?
I'm appearing on behalf of the property owners, and it's my understanding that this had been prearranged for me to testify on their behalf because they were out of state.
Just a minute, Mr. Sautner. I don't believe we have anything in our. Oh. Okay. Bear with me. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Sautner. Yes, we did receive this as an addition to our case that you are authorized to represent. Yes.
I just have I have a short letter from the property owners that they wish me to read to you.
That's fine. And again, as Mr. Odell said, this is not a public hearing, so we could hear from staff and the applicant, and then the board will act or ask questions and then act. So go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, board members, and thank you for your service. My name is Steve Sautner. Sarah Gar, owner of 2307 McCrae Road, asked me to attend this meeting tonight on her behalf. She and her husband, Bruce Aarons, are out of state at this time and are unable to attend. They had returned to the state for the December meeting, however, it was canceled. I will answer your questions as best I can tonight. The property owners provided me with some background information and the script to help me address the issues. The property owners wanted me to emphasize that they had not planned, wanted, or expected to extend this approved variance. However, circumstances beyond their control resulted in this need. A little background, when ZBEA approved the variance request in September of 2014, there were 3 additional conditions that needed to be met, which the property owners tried very hard to meet, including hiring an attorney, Dan Coffey, to help navigate Title 21 in the Muni system. Thus far, they have completed conditions number 1 and condition number 3. Condition number 2 is still in the process, and it's their understanding that it's nearly completed. The conditions that have been met at this time are 1, the approval of the variance, which was met in September 2014, and condition number 3, which was obtaining a building permit for a change of use from a triplex to a fourplex. The condition was met in October of 2014, and a certificate of occupancy was issued for the 4th unit in August of 2015. The only condition pending at this time is to provide an update as-built to the planning division that shows the changes that the Muni wanted done. Without the updated as-built, the Muni would not release the resolution of approval so that the notice of zoning action could be recorded. So the question is, so why hasn't a new as-built been completed? The Muni wanted the property owners to significantly change the frontage of their property that the Muni had just put in as part of a McCrae Road project. The property owners questioned that removal and redoing of the frontage and seek legal counsel with their attorney, Dan Coffey, who's familiar with Title 21. Changes wanted by the community included 1, replacing a large part of the recycled asphalt product that the community had just put on their property to comply with the required amount of open space. Mr. Coffey met with Bill Falsley, municipal attorney, showing that they had sufficient quality open space in the rear of the property to comply. However, in the course of this discussion, the Assembly reduced the amount of open space required, so the property now easily meets the footage requirements. Meeting the open requirement is apparently no longer an issue. Muni also wanted one of the driveways removed from the property that was planned and constructed as part of the McCray Road upgrade by the Muni. Now the Muni claims it was done in error. Mr. Coffey reviewed the plans initially with Mr. Falsley and now with Chris Schulte, Director of Office and Economic Community Development. Then they've been told by Mr. Coffey this is no longer an issue. A parking plan is still pending that they're waiting, I believe, from the Muni. In summary, the delay in the meeting the one-year timeline resulted in factors beyond the property owner's control, including one, need to seek legal counsel for issues relating to their property rights, Muni law, and Title 21. Two, the change of Muni administration between the Sullivan and Berkowitz administrations resulted in a change of key officials, appointees, and staff, which resulted in meeting delays. And three, just ongoing confusion, delays in getting clear direction as to specific issues. Again, they would like to thank you in understanding of the situation and why the extension is necessary. I'm sure the property owners want this done more than anyone else, and as a friend, I know that's been taxing on both of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sotner. Are there any questions of Mr. Sotner by the board? Yes, Ms. Dole.
I was just wondering why 1 year is being requested instead of a shorter amount of time.
You know, I can't answer that for the property owners. It's my understanding, though, that this is very close to being resolved, and that's the last I was told, that they weren't even sure that this was needed to be requested, but apparently it is. It's not going to make it. So I'm not sure why it needs to be a year.
I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? If not, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sotner. So I would entertain a motion regarding the request for the one-year time extension for this case. Yes, Ms. Eicher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In case matter 2015-0103, the request for a one-year time extension of a zoning variance for Lot 39 in the Littner subdivision, having relation to our former resolution 2014-009, I'm proposed to approve the one-year time extension.
Thank you, Ms. Eicher. Ms. McKay, you indicated you would second that motion?
Yes, I second.
Thank you. Ms. Eicher, care to comment?
I don't.
All right. Ms. McKay?
I'm going to support the motion. Staff has no objection, legal has no objection, and it sounds like the right thing to do.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? If not, please vote. That motion passes by a vote of 7-0. That brings us to our public hearings. Before we hear our first case under public hearings, I'd like to read the order of business. The chair shall introduce the variance and explain the procedure to be followed. The variance case number and the name of the applicant shall be read into the record. The board shall hear and rule on any objections to the sufficiency of notice. The board shall hear a brief staff presentation outlining the variance. not to exceed 10 minutes. On conclusion of the staff presentation, the board members and the applicant may then direct questions to the staff through the chair. The applicant shall give his or her presentation not to exceed 10 minutes. Throughout the proceedings, the burden of proof rests upon the applicant, who must convince the board by a preponderance of the evidence that the variance should be granted. On conclusion of the applicant's presentation, the board members and the staff may then direct questions to the applicant through the chair. The hearing shall then be open for public testimony. Each person has 3 minutes. Representatives of groups have 5 minutes. All persons who testify may be questioned by the board, staff, or the applicant. On conclusion of the public testimony, the staff, followed by the applicant, shall have the right of rebuttal. The board shall proceed to develop oral findings and conclusions with regard to the variance and disposition of the variance. The staff shall reduce the oral findings and conclusions to writing for subsequent adoption by the board at a later meeting. The matter then rests with the board, and the chair asks for a positive motion from the board. One other piece of information, a majority of the fully constituted board is required to pass a variance, so we have the fully constituted board consists of 9 members, so a vote of 5 in favor of a variance is necessary to grant the variance. That brings us to our first case this evening, case 2015-0104. The petitioners are Wayne E. and Darlene P. Dunn. Is the petitioner here? They've indicated they're present. Could staff provide us with the sufficiency of notice, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On November 19th, 42 public hearing notices were mailed. 1 response was received from the public with no objection. The Chugach Community Council had no objection to the variance and sent in a resolution on that matter.
Thank you, Mr. Odell. Will you proceed with your presentation?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The petitioner requests a variance from AMC 2140-040G minimum yard requirements to allow a residence, a deck, and stairs to encroach 0.5 feet into the side yard setback. The side yard setback in the R2A SL district is 5 feet. The existing house was built in 1975, remodeled and enlarged in 83 and 91. The deck and stairs were built in 2000. In 2006, the petitioner had an as-built done by a surveyor which discovered the house was encroaching onto Chugach State Park land. The entire house was moved 16 feet to the west in 2012. One of the requirements of the land use permit is to make sure the structure complies with applicable zoning requirements. I would like to go through the 7 standards individually. Standard number 1, staff finds that the standard is not met. There are no exceptional physical circumstances of the land that warrant the granting of a variance. There are constraints that affect the petition site, but they are not unique to the property. All the lots along this section of Fish Hatchery Road are affected by sloping topography. The lot has a similar lot size as other lots in the neighborhood. Standard number 2, staff finds that this standard is not met. There are no physical circumstances of the land contributing to the need for a variance. The petitioner moved the structure to a foundation that would have required them to meet the minimum yard requirements. None of the issues related to land necessitate placing the house within the required yard setback. Standard number 3, staff finds that this standard is not met. The standard speaks to the peculiarity of the lot, must arise out of some natural or physical condition of the lot, and whether the need for the variance is or was way beyond the control of the petitioner. There is a physical condition of the lot arising from the slope. However, the slope is not peculiar to this lot, and the slope cannot be reasonable related to the need for variance. The need for the variance is a result of an error made by the applicant. Obtaining a land use permit would have correctly placed the structure, and there would be no need for variance. Standard number 4, staff finds that this standard is substantially met. Given the character of the neighborhood, the 0.5 foot encroachment into the 5 foot setback will not likely adverse impact adjacent properties. The neighboring properties to the north, south, west, and east will be unaffected by the granting of the variance. Standard number 5, staff finds that this standard is met. The variance requested is dimensional and would not allow a use that is prohibited in the district if the variance is granted. The 0.5 foot encroachment into the 5-foot yard side setback would not change the character of the zoning district. Staff finds standard number 6 is met. There are no adverse effects if this variance is granted. And standard number 7, staff finds that this standard is not met. Reasonable use of the land is not prevented by meeting the 5-foot yard setback. The division finds that standards 1, 2, 3, and 7 are not substantially met and therefore recommends denial of the variance. If the board finds all 7 standards are substantially met, then approval should be subject to the 4 conditions listed on page 5 and 6 of the staff packet. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Odell. Are there any questions of staff by the board? Mr. Ron.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Odell, was State Parks solicited for input on this case, either as a landowner or otherwise interested party?
Through the chair, Mr. Ron, let's see here. Yes, they were, because all the landowners around were notified. They did not provide any comments to us. There is the letter on the additional agenda item that they provided to the Dunns.
Can you inform the board about that letter?
Yes, the letter, it states the state of Alaska cannot grant a private easement or property interest in lands which have not been designated by the legislature. Lands are not available for disposal. The state, they're basically stating the state's not able to provide an easement for the driveway. However, the city looks at it as the easement encroaching onto that parkland is it's basically a civil matter between the two parties.
Thank you.
Ms. McKay.
This is a 6-inch encroachment. Can you tell me what exactly encroaches? Is it a portion of the stairs? Is it a piece of the building?
Through the chair, Ms. McKay, yes, it is. Well, it's all 3. It's residence, deck, and stairs. And if we take a look at the as-built provided on page.
It was a little small, and I couldn't tell exactly what it was.
Yes. It's all 3, as I stated.
Okay, thank you.
And Ms. McKay, there's also a larger 11 by 17 in the other packet as well. Okay. Are there any other questions of staff by the board? Seeing none, could the petitioner come forward, please? Can you state and spell your name for the record, please?
Darlene Dunn, D-A-R-L-E-N-E, Dunn, D-U-N-N.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. And you have 10 minutes for your presentation, and we must find that all 7 standards are met in order to grant a variance. So if, as part of your presentation, you can make sure to address the 7 standards.
I do have one question for the planning people. Am I able to ask a question of them? I thought there was a...
I'm not sure that the question... a question for...
I just wondered if somebody went up and looked at the property.
Through the chair, I did not get a chance to get up and look at the property, so the answer is no.
That's-
You have 10 minutes for your presentation.
Okay.
Please begin.
Just to give an overview, you know, when you look at it, 2020 hindsight says, yeah, we should have put the house someplace else.
And would you speak into the microphone, please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Is that good? Okay. But it all began in a time in 1975 when there weren't any ordinances in Eagle River, and we chose the place that we wanted to build the house. And our building, that's when we chose our building location, and everything else just followed from there. So the planners continue to say that we could have chosen a different site. That would have meant that in 1975 we had the future vision to know where one choice would lead when the Muni came along, which we didn't know. Mistakes may have been made as time went on, but the original premise was good and the location was good. Once the site was chosen in good faith, it would be difficult, if not impossible, to say we should have chosen differently. Just a quick rundown. We bought the property in 1974, and we walked the lines of the, there was only one corner that we could walk the lines from. It was a corner of Lot M. We built a very small house, 696 square feet, with a loft. We built it out of pocket with rough cut on spruce logs. In 1984, we added a single-story 12-by-16 kitchen. In 1991, the log foundation was rotting and we needed to put in cement footings, and so since we needed to do that, we decided if we lifted the house, that would be really our only way, because of its location, to expand the size of the house. So that's what we did. In 2006, we decided our kids were gone, excuse me, our kids were gone, and we decided we needed to consider moving to a flatter piece of the world where we didn't have to lay on the ground and put chains on when we hit our 80s. So we had the property surveyed at that point, and that's when we discovered that we encroached by 9.3 feet onto Chugach State Park. At that point, I picked up the phone and made my confession to the Chugach State Park people, and it was to the park supervisor who now runs the bakery, whose name I have forgotten. Lewandowski, anyway. Anyway, we contacted them. They said, we'll hear from you, you'll hear from us, you'll hear from us. We never did. We tried to stay in contact through a fellow that they determined was our contact person, and we never heard anything. So in 2008 or 9, we hired attorney Tom Meacham to help us try and navigate with the state what we should do, and we tried changing lot lines to make it all work, and we got nowhere. So in 2012, we decided, despite saying that we probably could never move the house, that we had no choice, because we wanted to sell it, and we couldn't sell it the way it was. We could have sold it the way it was, but we didn't want to sell it the way it was. So we moved the house about 16 feet to the west. Now, we moved it as far as we possibly could. There are pictures in there that show that it's, in our packet, that show that it's on the edge of the hill, and we went as far as we could and still be on bedrock, because we're up there, and we wanted to stay on bedrock. So that's as far as we felt that we could actually move the house. That's as far forward as we. So that's what we did. In 2015, we just, after working on the house between 2012 and 2015 to redo the inside, yada, 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 we put it up for sale, and we had an as-built done at that point to get the COSA approved, which was approved, and that's when we found out that we were 4.5 feet from the state park line when the Muni codes say we're supposed to be 5 feet. At that point, there's nothing we can do. The tolerance is allowed in the chart that I read at 4.8 inches, so we're kind of 1.2 inches off the bucket there. And as far as the numbers, I don't have them there. The findings where the that are not met. The number one finding, it said the subject property, such as not limited to streams, wetlands, blah, 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 and all that. The land is steep, but the main point here is that the building location was chosen before this variance would have been needed. Once we chose the place where we were going to build our house, it's there. You either tear down the house and find another spot, which we couldn't afford to do, obviously, if we couldn't afford to have a survey when we built the home in the first place. And the survey that the house was only, the whole subdivision was only platted on paper at that point. So Okay, it wasn't possible to move the home down the hill, so the original choice of the building size was based on the dampness. When we built our driveway, we went through a very swampy area, and the next fellow that built it crossed the bottom part of our property, buried at least maybe one piece of equipment. Several pieces of equipment, building it in one bog, just building his road, and that bog is on the bottom part of that piece of property. And it's not like you would know that it's there in October or November anyway. And he had to bring in a lot of fill. Okay, and the second, so that's number one. Number two, because of these physical circumstances, the strict application of this code would create an exceptional or undue hardship upon the property owner and would deprive the applicants of right commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same. The planning said that the house can be built on the lot outside of the required setback. Yeah, it could have been, but it was already built before the codes came in, and when we moved it to get it off to State Park, we did the very best we could. Our choice of moving it was simply and only to move it west in a direct line to remove the trespass from State Park. Getting a land permit to move the home may have resulted in requesting a variance at that point instead of now, but in the whole scheme of things, there have been no citations issued by the municipality or by the State Park. The State Park just doesn't really, they've got bigger fish to fry, I think. Number three, the hardship is not self-imposed, and special conditions and circumstances do not result from actions of the applicant, and such conditions do not merely constitute an inconvenience. Planning states that the slope cannot reasonably be related to the need for a variance. I disagree strongly with that. The slope is the reason we can't move the house any further than we did. To keep it on bedrock, to keep it from falling off the mountain, it is steep. It is steep. Building a home on a lot before the codes are in place determine the original placement of the home, and this request for a variance is not just an inconvenience. We've already lost one sale, due at least in part to the setback issue. We moved the home and are now requesting a variance so we can sell the home and without leaving issues for a new owner. The option would be to tear down the home and start all over again, which obviously that's more than an inconvenience. Planning states that the land use permit prior to building the home, it wouldn't have changed anything. The lot has never been surveyed and setbacks had not been established prior to our building the home. And number seven, the variance granted is the minimum variance that will make possible a reasonable use of that land. The variance we're requesting is the absolute minimum needed to allow us to reasonably use as into owner's right to sell our property. A land use permit would never have related to a conforming location. There wasn't anything to conform to in 1975. At any point to meet codes, we have had to tear down the house and choose a new location. And then if I can, and I don't know if this is appropriate at this time, to address the recommendations that they made if you approve this variance. Should I do that now? Yeah?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. Record the notice of zoning action, that's number two, that's all good. Number one just is a definition. I wonder, to obtain after the fact land use permits for residence deck and stairs, is that possible to do that? Does anybody know? I mean, I'm assuming it is.
This is time for you to make your presentation.
Okay,
Staff
I
has
just
made their recommendation, so you can
okay.
make yours.
All right, one more thing.
It's not a time for you to ask questions.
Okay, no more questions. The right-of-way encroachments, I would like to have number 4 eliminated at this point, because the letter from the State Park, I talked extensively with Claire LeClaire, and I asked what we needed to do to abandon the driveway. And first I asked her if she could give us a right to use the driveway, an easement. Apparently there was a situation in Nancy Lake where they gave an easement, a state park easement to a private property. It ended up in the courts, and the court said you can't give an individual a right to use a state park that the rest of the world doesn't have. so they can't give individual easements. The state park can no longer give individual easements to people for this kind of purpose. So that's not a possibility. She's pleased that the house isn't there anymore, but because she's not able to provide an easement, I asked her also if there was anything that we needed to do to abandon the property. She said it can't be abandoned. It was never yours to abandon, and we don't have anything that says what you need to do. She said if you just, and that's the last statement, I understand it's your intention to vacate that portion of your driveway that encroaches on state park land, and that is a satisfactory resolution. So.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Are there any questions of the applicant by the board? Mr. Vig.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm not certain if you asked for condition number 4 to be removed, or if you're willing to stand by the request to vacate.
We will stand by the request to vacate. That's an agreement that we've made with the state park, but it's my understanding, according to a letter that we got from Mr. Gray, that any encroachment on that is between us and the state park, and the muni has nothing to do with it. That's why I would like to have that removed, because she's made it clear that it's a satisfactory resolution, the fact that we've said we're going to vacate it. And in Mr. Gray's letter, I wrote it down somewhere, but it's like page 3, paragraph 3, where he says, I can look it up if you give me a sec here.
Okay, I think I understand your position.
I think the planning folks, Mr. Odell, spoke to that issue too.
Ms. Dole.
Yes, first, I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying you would.
Ms. Dole, could you speak into the microphone a little bit?
Sure.
Thanks.
With regard to I guess the concrete pad, that's what's within the Chugach State
It's not
Park?
concrete, it's gravel. It's just gravel.
Okay. And is that part of the driveway access to the building? How is that used currently?
It has been used as part of the driveway access, but it's not necessary to use it as part of the access.
Okay, so are you going to relocate? Are you going to move your driveway? Is that part of the
We will
plans?
stop our driveway.
Okay.
It will stop here instead of going that way, going around. We will stop it before it gets to State Park.
Okay. Is there a garage or something it
No.
goes into?
No.
Okay.
Excuse me, sir. If you're going to speak, we need you to state your name for the record, and then speak in the microphone.
Wayne Dunn, Wayne Dunn. There is another parking area that's not too far from the house that is on our own property, and that is where we will move the parking area to that. It has already been moved to that area. It is off a state park.
Okay. And when you moved the house, I forget how many feet to the west?
16.
16 feet. At that point, why did you not go to the muni and request a land use permit or check with them at that point in time?
I can't really answer why we didn't. We just knew we had to move it, and honestly, I never thought permit. I thought, let's get this house off a state park. So that's my mistake.
Okay. That's it for my questions right
Okay.
now.
Thank you, Ms. Dole. Ms. McKay?
It's a question for staff.
Okay, go ahead.
Through the chair. What do you think about condition number 4? Could we eliminate the first part of it, since we've already know that they can't obtain that encroachment permit, and just say provide proof to planning that the driveway has been relocated?
Through the chair, Ms. McKay, if that's the wish of the board and you make a motion, then that's up to the board.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ayers?
Through the chair, Ms. Dunn. Answered one of my questions already, but I wanted to know, is this the primary entrance to the house?
The part of the driveway that was on Chugach State Park? What are you asking?
No, not at the driveway, the actual stairs and the deck landing.
Yes,
That
yes.
is the primary entrance to the house?
Yes.
Okay, my second question is, looking at the photographs that you provided, it appears that the stairs and the deck are set in from the building corner at least some dimension. Do you know what that is?
The point of the stairs being at the angle that they are to the house, is that what you're talking about?
If you, on the photographs that you provided, I'm looking at the photograph on the bottom right corner here.
May I approach?
And I look at the corner of the house,
Let me look.
and I see the deck and the railing, and it appears to be set in from the corner of the house.
Oh, yeah.
And I believe that's also
Yeah,
for
yeah,
reference
yes.
on page 19 of the staff packet, bottom right.
Okay, now I'm looking at the same picture. Could you repeat the question? I see the picture. The question you're asking, could you repeat it again? So,
My question is the deck and the stairs set in from the corner of the house along the house wall?
yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Do you have an idea of how much that is actually set in?
Never been able to measure. We've never actually been able to measure it.
He means from the house, from the corner of the house.
Yeah, it's, that offset is about 5 inches from the stairs.
So it would be very close to the setback line?
Yes, sir, it
and
would.
Possibly not encroaching?
Possibly.
Are there any other questions? Seeing no questions, does staff have any questions of the applicant?
Through the chair, no, I do not.
Thank you. With that, if you'll, I guess I'll say have a seat and we'll open it for public hearing.
Thank you.
Is there anyone from the public wishing to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one. The public hearing is closed. Since there was no, there was no rebuttal time reserved, so there's no rebuttal time left, although there was no public hearing to rebut. With that, I would, bear with me. With that, the matter rests with the board, so I'd entertain a positive motion from a board member, please. Yes, Ms. McKay.
I move that we approve a variance from AMC 2140-040G2 to allow residents' deck stairs to encroach 0.5 feet into the side yard setback on Fire Lake subdivision, Lot 4, Tract K, subject to the conditions on pages 5 and 6, 1, 2, and 3, changing condition 4 to read, striking the first part to read in total, provide proof to planning that the driveway has been relocated to a conforming location.
Thank you for your patience. I couldn't write that fast. Could I have a second, please? Ms. Dole?
second the motion.
Thank you. Ms. McKay, would you speak to your motion, please?
I plan on supporting my motion, and as to the standards of approval, first standard, I believe that even as the staff has stated that the petition site is steeply sloped, and the testimony from the petitioner that the bottom part of the lot is very swampy, that this did have an effect on the position of the house in the first place, and the testimony of the petitioner is that they moved the house as far away from the encroachment as they could and still be on stable land. Number two, there are physical circumstances contributing to the need of the variance. Let's see, what else does it say? Yep. And condition number three, that the hardship is not self-imposed, and the special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. That actually the actions of the applicant were to try and remove as much of the encroachment as they could. So I don't believe that it's merely an inconvenience. Standards 4, 5, and 6 go with the staff that they are met, and number 7, the variance granted is the minimum variance that would make possible a reasonable use of the land. This is a 6-inch variance. I feel that the request is the minimus in the first place, and that it's certainly unreasonable to make them tear down the house. And that's it.
Thank you, Ms. McKay. Ms. Dole?
Thank you. I guess first I do have I would suggest a possible change in the conditions if we recommend approval, because with Ms. McCabe's suggestion to number 4, I believe she still left in the word relocate, and I believe the applicant talked about abandonment, but I would also like to maybe refer to removal of the gravel pad. So I would start out by throwing that out for consideration. With regard to the standards, with regard to the first one, I find that in addition to the slope and that the placement of the house initial house in 1975, before zoning was applicable to this site, and so in that location is a physical feature that goes along with the slope in terms of the physical circumstances of the property, and that given that what the applicant said about moving it as far as possible to the west, and the limitations of the physical nature of that satisfy condition number 1. Likewise, with factor 2, those same physical circumstances I think apply. I think that it would be an exceptional or undue hardship to expect them to put a new house in a totally different location, given the 6 inches of this house that's in the side yard setback and the other existing physical limitations. And I agree with Ms. Cabe with regard to factor 7. I plan to support the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Dole. Just for clarification, we have a motion for the 4 standards as with the motion for approval with the 4 conditions. The 4th condition as presented by Ms. McKay. If there is a request to modify that condition, we'd need to either come up with some agreeable language as a friendly amendment or make a separate motion to modify that. So, yeah, we'd need a motion to amend condition number 4 if that's how we so wanted to go, just for clarification on that. Mr. Ayers. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Ron.
Happy to jump in here, Mr. Chair, with a motion. Thank you, Ms. Dole, for entering us into this discussion. I would like to make a motion to amend the motion on the table before the board as presented by Ms. McKay regarding condition number 4 on page 6 of the staff packet. Amendment to, for that condition to read as follows. Vacate that portion of driveway that encroaches on state park land and provide proof to planning within 1 year. And I'd be happy to speak to that motion when I have an opportunity to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Ron. Ms. McKay, you've seconded that motion to amend condition 4?
Ms. Baker.
Ms. Eicher, I did.
I'm sorry. I'm having issues doing multiple things here.
Okay, I do second the
Ms.
motion.
Eicher, thank you. Mr. Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the board, again, I think it's important that we get this right based on the discussion by the petitioner and the letter as presented into the record from State Parks signed by Claire Hall and LeClaire. I would recommend that the board entertain consistency with the language around vacate and enable the petitioner and State Parks to continue the dialogue on what that term may mean, and rather than deviate from that with something like abandon, remove, abolish, destroy. I carry on perhaps in jest, but that terminology may have some weight that we may not intend and would again leave it to those parties to resolve. My interest as a board member and in representation of Title 21 is to ensure that the remedy at the lot line is affected, and that may be done through something like flagging that portion of the property line and excluding egress onto state park lands, and affect vacation as opposed to actual physical removal of a gravel pad that again may not be in state park's best interest. So those are my reasonings for the amendment as proposed.
Thank you, Mr. Ron. Ms. Eicher, you've seconded that motion.
Would
you speak to that?
And I do appreciate Mr. Ron's proposal for amending the motion, and I don't have anything to add to that, so I support the motion.
Thank you. Ms. McKay.
I thought it was a testimony of the petitioner that there is nothing to vacate. They don't have an easement, so there's nothing to vacate. I don't think vacation is the right term. It has other meaning. You vacate easements, you vacate right-of-ways. The driveway is there, but it's not a legal something. Anyway, I'm not going to support your motion.
Thank you, Ms. McKay. Mr. Ayers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My 2 cents, as it were. The driveway is not subject to a setback, and I don't believe that it's under the purview of this board to actually discuss that. the issue between the encroachment is between the two landowners, and I don't believe it is under our authority to impose conditions regarding it. Having said that, I would still support the original motion, but I would throw it out there as a possible amendment to strike condition number 4 completely.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. Just for clarity with my simple mind, because I'm having a hard time keeping track tonight, we are hearing and will be voting on Mr. Ron's amendment to condition number 4, and then Mr. Ayers, if you so chose, we could address eliminating condition number 4 altogether. Mr. Vig.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Ayers' interpretation and appreciate Mr. Ron's suggestion about allowing the two abutting property owners to work out what that means. But in the years I've been on the board, we've approved encroachments or variances for encroachments into setbacks when in fact there was an encroachment of the property line, and that's never been a concern before. So I have difficulty attaching condition number 4 to this approval at all. And so I guess that's where I'm coming from.
So, Mr. Vig, again, we will be hearing discussion on Mr. Ron's motion, and then we'll address all 4 standards as proposed by Ms. McKay. Second, Ms. Dole.
Through the chair, I have a question for staff. I would like to be sure I understand that the gravel pad is not considered encroaching into the 5-foot setback, and if that's because it's on the ground and not above 30 inches or whatever the limit is for that.
Through the chair, Ms. Dole, you're correct. It's not considered structure.
Okay. But a chunk of it is within the 5-foot setback. It's just not a structure.
That's correct.
Thank you. That was my question, and I'm still trying to digest everything else.
Thank you, Ms. Dole. Mr. Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do not intend to support my motion to amend and look forward to hearing a new amendment put forward via motion from Board Member Vig, Ayers, or someone else regarding condition number 4.
Can you just withdraw your motion?
It would require a second.
I was hoping to get another chance to vote, but I withdraw my motion, and I guess would look for a second from the board.
And Ms. Eicher, do you second the withdrawal of Mr. Ron's motion?
I do. I've been persuaded by my fellow board members.
Now, can I amend my motion?
Okay, so Mr. Ron's amendment to condition number 4 has been withdrawn. So at this time we have the motion to approve with the 4 conditions as outlined by Ms. McKay. Ms. McKay, would you wish to?
Can I amend my motion?
You can make a motion to amend, yes.
I would like to strike condition 4 in its entirety.
Thank you, Ms. McKay.
And I guess, Ms. Dole?
Would you push?
Push?
Yeah, push your motion. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. McKay.
I'm not going to second that motion. I believe it would still be appropriate to have that as originally proposed, and would prefer to see that remain.
Thank you, Ms. Dole. So if we have a second, then we can discuss that, and your comments could be noted for the record. Mr. Ron, you've indicated you would second
That's
Ms.
correct.
McKay's motion. Okay, thank you. Ms. McKay, would you care to speak to your motion to withdraw that condition?
I was persuaded by Mr. Ayers and Mr. Vig that it's not appropriate to, that the situation is between the two landowners and not a case for the municipality.
Okay. Is there other discussion? Yes, Ms. Dole.
I would like to hear from staff, since they were the one who recommended it in the first place, as to their thoughts on it.
Mr. Odell?
Through the chair, Ms. Dole, can you clarify specifically again or restate?
Yes. The staff recommended that condition 4 be one of the conditions if the variance was granted. And I would like to hear from staff as to, I guess, their thoughts as to why they recommended that condition 4 be put in there with a focus on the, whatever you want to call it, vacating or relocating the driveway if a right-of-way encroachment permit could not be obtained.
Sure. The staff looked at it as the driveway development into the state park was considered a trespass issue, and we're just trying to, municipality of Anchorage wouldn't grant the encroachment to exist, so we're just asking for conformity to clean up the trespass issue.
Has that been recommended in other similar types of situations where there have been other encroachments? To your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I wouldn't be able to comment for Zeba. It has happened in other cases. But specifically a trespass issue like this is just something that the staff and the department would like to see resolved, either through an access agreement. We do see access agreements between other private property owners for encroachment. So to answer your question, yes, we have seen it, but not with the Chugach State Park. It's usually between two private landowners that they enter into an access agreement.
Thank you, Ms. Dole. Mr. Ayers.
Mr. Chair, I have a question to staff as well. Through the chair, Mr. Odell. Are driveways subject to a side yard setback?
Through the chair, Mr. Ayers, no, they're not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. Mr. Vig.
Question for staff through the chair. Mr. Odell, having heard the rationale behind the thoughts to strike condition number 4, could staff support the motion with number 4 absent?
Through the chair, I think I would just relay back, if that's the motion of the board, that's what they decide, then that's what we'll carry forth.
Thank you, Mr. Vig. Mr. Odell. So we have a motion to strike the condition number 4 from the recommendations. Is there any other discussion on that motion? If not, please vote on the motion to strike condition 4. Is there one question? Good? Yeah. That motion passes by a vote of 6-1. So now we have our main motion for approval of the variance subject to conditions 1, 2, and 3. Is there any additional discussion on that motion? If not, please vote. That motion passes by a vote of 7-0. I do need to read for the record, every final decision of the board shall clearly state on its face it is a final decision with respect to all issues involved in the case, and that the parties have 30 days from the date of mailing or other distribution of the decision to file an appeal to the Superior Court. Our next case this evening is case 2015-0111. The petitioner is Kirsten Schultz. Is the petitioner here? She's indicated she's present. Could staff provide us with the sufficiency of notice?
Yes, Mr. Chair. There were 83 public hearing notices mailed out on December 10th, 2015.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Would you proceed with your presentation?
This is a variance from AMC 2140.040G.3 minimum yard requirements to allow a second-story cantilever deck to encroach 6.6 feet into the 10-foot rear yard setback. There is an existing deck which is in poor condition and is in need of replacement. The requested deck size is approximately 125 square feet. Standard number 1 is not met. There are no exceptional physical circumstances of the land that warrant the granting of a variance. The lot is not affected by slopes, streams, or wetlands. The lot is similar in size to the other adjoining lots. The shape of the lot is similar to adjoining lots 9 and 11 in that they all have angular lots. While there appear to be no physical circumstances of the subject property, the structure occupies most of the lot area so that any building addition would necessarily be located in the setback area. This condition limits the developable footprint of the property. Standard number 2 is not met. There are no physical circumstances of the land contributing to the need for this variance. The petitioner is not deprived of rights commonly enjoyed by other parties in the R2 district. Standard number 3 is not met. The owner desires a larger deck. This is self-imposed. The desire for a larger deck does not impose an undue hardship on the property owner. There is no natural or physical peculiarity of the subject lot. Standard number 4 may be met. Given the character of the neighborhood, it does not appear that the granting of this variance will have an adverse effect on adjacent properties at this time. The petitioner has provided a statement from the Buccaneer Condo Owner Association stating no objection to the deck addition to Unit 4. Further signatures were provided from the owners of Units 10 and 11 indicating no objection to this variance request. The rear yards of these units face the rear yard of the subject unit. However, setbacks are required in order to provide light, sunshine, and air to structures, allow space for recreation, lawn, water filtration, building maintenance, and give privacy between neighbors. The fact that the current neighbors do not object does not mean that future neighbors may not feel adversely affected. Standard number 5 is met. The requested variance for a rear yard setback encroachment will not change the character of R2D zoning district. Standard number 6 is met. No adverse effects are anticipated if the variance is approved. Standard 7 is not met. a conforming alternative exists, which is to reduce the size of the requested deck to fit within the confines of the lot setbacks. The requested deck appears to be larger than the stated need for a small table and 4 chairs. Also, the deck appears to be larger than the decks in the neighborhood. Those were photos provided by the petitioner on pages 34 and 35 of the packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. And maybe I didn't hear, but if we were to find
The division finds that standards 1, 2, 3, and 7 are not substantially met, and therefore recommend denial of the variance.
And if the board was to find all 7 standards,
Those are
on
four.
page 6 there have been 4 conditions
Yes.
that staff has presented. Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Are there any questions of staff by the board? Mr. Ron.
Thank you. Through the chair, Ms. Ferguson, what's the staff's position as to why this variance has been requested?
Well, the stated through the board, Mr. Ron, the statement from the petitioner has indicated that the deck is in poor condition. I think that the joists are rotting and it needs to be replaced. Beyond that, I don't have an answer.
Thank you.
Ms. McKay.
Is this substantially the same as I'm trying to find the case number. The resolution that we just approved, resolution number 2015-009, same place, same text.
Yeah, I think it's in the neighborhood. I think it may be the development adjacent to the subject development.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Vig.
Thank you. Through the chair, Ms. Ferguson, the applicant states in their petition that if the deck were to be constructed in a non-encroaching, to not encroach, that it would, I guess essentially there wouldn't be any room to construct it. And if that's the case, would that rise to the level of being deprived of a right normally enjoyed by other properties in this district?
Mr. Vig, I'm sorry, didn't hear the middle part of what you're saying.
So the petitioner states that if the deck were to be built so as to not encroach, that it would be either unusable or too small to function as a deck. And my question is, if that were the case, would that rise to the level of denying a right commonly enjoyed by other properties in the district?
Mr. Vig, my answer is that from our point of view, looking at it, in the R2 district across the municipality, all the properties that are zoned R2D, it would not be an unreasonable request. However, staff and the commission, the board are aware that there have been other variances similar to this one with deck encroachments that have come forward, and the board has decided to grant their variance request.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of staff by the board? Mr. Ayers.
Through the chair, What I'm curious about, I'm not quite clear on, in the staff packet, it says that the deck is built, but the information shows that it's a proposed deck.
Mr. Ayers, there is an existing deck there now that is in poor condition and needs to be replaced. And the request is that when they do put a replacement deck in, that they will need a variance for the replacement deck.
So they would still need a variance for the existing deck.
Technically, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up, Mr. Ayers, I think asked the question that, or you answered the question I was going to ask, that it appeared that the existing deck encroaches into the setback, and it does?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And then the second part of my question, and a variance has not been granted previously for the existing deck?
Mr. Chair, not to my knowledge.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Ms. Dole.
Through the chair, I'd like to staff to say how much of an encroachment the existing deck is into the setback.
Ms. Dole, I'm afraid I don't have that information unless there are some drawings in the packet that might indicate it, and there is on page 46 of the packet. You can see that triangular piece that's outside that dotted line on Unit 4. That portion is encroaching. But I didn't do the math on figuring out the square feet.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Dole, no other questions?
No other questions.
Okay. Are there any other questions of staff by the board? So, Ms. Ferguson, one more question. We have before us the variance request to encroach 6.6 feet into the 10-foot rear side yard setback. And I'll be asking the same questions of the applicant, but that is a request for their proposed deck. However, the board, the existing deck, or the existing encroachment of that existing the encroachment of the existing deck into the setback still requires a variance. So this board could also grant a lesser variance than that which is requested. Is that also an option?
Mr. Chair, absolutely. Yes, that is a possibility.
Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. Are there any other questions of staff? If not, could the petitioner please come forward? Could you state and spell your name for the record, please?
Kirsten Schultz, KIRSTENSCHULTZ.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. And you have 10 minutes for your presentation. If you would want to request any rebuttal after the presentation and any questions of the public, you can do so either now or at the end of your presentation.
Okay. Go ahead. All right, thanks. So just going to kind of give an overview of what's been going on, and this is provided in your packet. But Unit 4 is the unit that I live in the Buccaneer Condo Association, and I am requesting a variance to encroach into the 10-foot rear property setback in order to build a deck. The deck would replace a balcony that is currently present and requires repairs due to water damage. The balcony was built during the original condominium construction in 1979, and it's ineffectively small and has significant water damage. The proposed deck would be on the south side of the condominium. The closest neighbors to the south are Unit 10 and Unit 11 of the Bootlegger Park Homeowners Association. And these buildings, even after the requested deck encroachment, would maintain a minimum of 18-foot and 40-foot distance from the proposed deck location. The proposed deck would not adversely affect the use of surrounding properties, as it would not impede views, nor would it be placed unreasonably close to any adjoining buildings. Additionally, the strict adherence of the code would deprive Unit 4 of similar benefits as enjoyed by other neighboring property owners, and I'll get into that a little bit further. So I'm just going to speak to the standards that were not approved by the municipality. So those will be standards 1, 2, 3, and 7. Standard 1 references extraordinary physical circumstances. So Unit 4 is located in an area of exceptional or extraordinary physical circumstance for 3 reasons. The first being an irregular lot shape. The second, the fact that the property is located adjacent to a sewer easement. And thirdly, extreme weather conditions present in the Westchester Lagoon area. At the time that the variance application was submitted, I had not considered weather as a physical circumstance. However, I have since been made aware of at least 2 cases which had extreme weather accepted as an extraordinary physical circumstance by the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals. So I will be speaking to that in addition to what's included in your packet. Firstly, to talk to the irregular lot shape. Lot 10 is an irregular shape resulting in Unit 4 being situated very close to the 10-foot rear property setback, and the building had to be placed in that location in order to honor the 20-foot front yard setback to the north and the 5-foot side setback to the east. With the current position of the home, any size deck would result in an encroachment of the 10-foot rear property setback, and that can be seen in attachment 1. Secondly, to speak to the sewer easement, there is a 30-foot sewer easement running directly south of Unit 4. Due to the 30-foot utility easement setback code, the properties located south of Unit 4 are not positioned directly south of Unit 4. Rather, they are offset to the east and to the west. And this creates extra large distances between the buildings, a lot further distance between buildings than you would see in any of the adjacent properties. So Unit 10 and Unit 11 of the Bootleggers Park Condo Association are the nearest buildings, and after the requested deck addition, they would still maintain a minimum distance of 40 feet and 18 feet, respectively. This is a reasonable distance to have between buildings, and I have received letters of non-objection from both of these residents, which are included in the packet. Thirdly, the extreme weather condition. Unit 4 is located in the Westchester Lagoon area, and there is a high level of both wind and rain, which directly impacts my unit from the south. The weather has contributed significantly to the deterioration of the deck and allows water to enter into the building. The current deck design has rotted cantilever joists that are creating a structural issue and allowing leakage into the main building. And the new deck would rely on both post and beam supports, which would eliminate the pathway of water into the building. And I'd like to point out that while the municipality has indicated that my uniquely shaped lot is not an exceptional or extraordinary physical circumstance, the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals found in case 2015-0090 that an irregularly shaped lot was an adequate circumstance to meet standard number 1. Additionally, for 2 cases in neighboring dwellings, case numbers 97-0046 and 2015-0090, the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals found that weather in the Westchester Lagoon area was a sufficient circumstance to meet standard number 1. Okay, I'll move on to standard number 2, which is the exceptional or undue hardship, which deprives the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties. So the denial of this variance will deprive me of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties. There are a number of cases in which the municipality of Anchorage has granted neighboring properties the right to protrude into property setbacks. The first and most relevant example would be that in which the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals approved on October 8th of 2015 case 2015-009 for the Bootlegger Park Condo Associations to install decks into a setback encroachment. Also, in 1997, the Zoning Board of Examiners and Appeals approved variance case 1997-046 for a building 1 block down from my unit to have a deck encroachment into a setback. The third case I'd like to bring up was in 2006, Unit 5 of my Buccaneer Condo Association, which is my direct next door neighbor, received approval from the municipality of Anchorage to install a building addition which encroaches into the same 10-foot rear property setback. Moving on to standard number 3, that the hardship is not self-imposed. The prevailing weather pattern of Westchester Lagoon is not self-imposed. I can't control the weather, and the building, due to the sewer easement, and the buildings that are south of mine are offset, so I get directly impacted from all of the wind and the rain. And the same is said for the sewer easement. It's directly behind my house, and that's not true for some of my neighboring homes. And the last standard that I would like to address is that it is the minimum variance that will make possible a reasonable use of the land. So the requested deck size is a minimum to give usable space and to provide a safe and weather-resistant support design. The municipality of Anchorage commented that a conforming alternative would be to reduce the size of the deck to fit within the confines of the lot setback. However, this is not possible for 3 reasons. Firstly, the irregular shape of the lot means that any deck would protrude into the 10-foot property setback. The building is located less than 1 foot from the 10-foot rear property setback, and this location is necessary in order to confirm with the 20-foot front setback code. My second point would be that, as I previously stated, the new deck design eliminates the cantilevered support joists that have become rotted and are creating a pathway for water to enter the house. The new design incorporates a post and beam construction, which eliminates a pathway of water into the house. Attachment 13 shows the location of the support pilings, which are positioned to maintain a safe distance from the underground utilities. I called the utility companies and the people that do the pile drivings to find out how far the posts needed to be from the utilities, and they recommended at least 2 feet, probably more. So the posts and beams are positioned in such a way so that I'm not touching the utility lines or getting unnecessarily close to them. And so the location of the support pilings dictate the size of the deck. And then the third point, that it is the minimum required size, is on attachment number 14 that shows the detailed deck design. There is a platform and steps that are required by code. So because of the height, I have to have 2 steps in order to get down to the deck. And these effectively remove usable area of the deck. So this shows that it is a minimum size to allow table and chairs, and while still maintaining the municipality code to have the steps there. So in closing, I would like to say that I really truly believe that the variance meets all of the required standards, and even more importantly, it's within keeping of the spirit of the zoning ordinance. Especially if you look at it from a common sense standpoint. I don't feel like I'm doing any harm, and I feel like a lot of similar cases have been approved by the zoning board. So the deck addition does not create a safety hazard. It's not unreasonably large, and it does not negatively impact any of the surrounding properties. So I thank you for your time, and I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. You have 18 seconds for rebuttal if you need it. Are there any questions of the applicant by the board? A couple questions, Ms. Schultz. Have you obtained letters of non-objection from the utility companies?
I have, and they should be included in the packet. I have them from all of the utility companies.
I believe on pages, where did they start?
So they're figure 6 through figure 11.
Oh, that's on your application. 6.
All right, I guess figure 7 is the start, or figure 8 is the start from utility companies, and then the ones previous are letters of non-objection from neighboring properties.
Right, I'm trying, that's on your application. I'm just trying to find where that is in the staff packet. Bear with me for a second.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I believe that it begins on page 39 and runs through page 43.
Thank you. And second question, I didn't catch, you have an existing deck. Why the need to increase the size of the existing deck?
When moving to the post and beam design, which eliminates the need for the cantilever, and that prevents a pathway of water to move into the house, which is happening with the current design. So because of the position of the beams that are required due to the utility lines, it has to come out that far. And also because of the municipality code requirement for 2 steps to get down to the deck, it takes up quite a bit of space and makes that unusable.
Thank you, Ms. Dole.
Yes, looking at your...
And again, could you speak into the microphone? Thank you.
Certainly. Trying to find the page now, but you have a page where you show the design of the proposed deck, and it's page 23 of the with application packet, and it shows the table and a space for the 2 steps and table and 4 chairs, but it shows an additional area as well, and so I was just wondering whether it was really the minimum needed, and if you could address staff's comment that it seems larger than the decks on the pictures of the adjacent properties on page 12 and 13 of your the application packet.
So if you look on page 44 of staff packet, page 22 of my application, it shows the electric and phone utility line. So in order to stay a minimum distance from that post that's furthest on the right of the page needs to be where it is, so we can't move it in. And I don't know the exact size of the other decks, but this is definitely of similar size and of similar size to all of the decks in my condo association.
I don't have other questions. Oh, actually, I do have another question, which I just wanted to make sure that there would not be any egress or from the deck. There wouldn't. Would there be any kind of egress, like emergency fire?
No, so it maintains the minimum fire requirement between buildings. And I have that distance in my application that I can quote if needed.
That's okay. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ron.
Thank you. Through the chair, Ms. Schultz, you've talked about the platform and step required per code. As you've described, you're replacing the deck and changing the support structure. Is not a remedy to change the elevation of that deck to eliminate the need for the platform and step?
So if the height of the deck were to be raised any in order for it not to have the steps to come down, it would be at the level of my windows. So I'd have 3 windows there. So essentially the deck would be like, there would be windows sticking out below the deck.
Mr. Ayers.
To the Chair, Ms. Schultz. I'm curious about the ownership with Bootlegger Park Condo Association. They own...
Again, Mr. Ayers, could you speak into the microphone, please, so it's recorded? Thank you. We're having a hard time picking you up on the microphone.
Okay. My question has to do with ownership of the common areas. Do you own the unit boundary around your condominium, or do you own a portion of Lot 10 in common with the Unit 3 next door?
I guess there's not a property line between Unit 3 and myself, so I guess but it's owned by the condo association, all the land is.
So all of the area on Lot 10, Block 1, and the neighboring units are all owned by the association itself?
Right, correct.
The reason why I ask is it seems like there are other conforming alternatives within code to rectify the problems that this association is continuing to have, and that's through replatting and moving the lot lines. And if it's all owned by one association, it shouldn't be that big of a deal to do. So that's my one comment on that. And my other comment is you're only applying for Unit 4. You don't have anything to do with Unit 3 and the existing encroachment there. Okay, thank you.
Can I say something?
Ms. Schultz,
No.
you've indicated, you had nodded your head, but just for the record, this is just for Unit 4. Is that what the variance?
It is, but I think I might have said something that wasn't true earlier inadvertently. The Unit 10 is mine, but the lot line due south of us, that is where you go into somebody else's property. It was all built by the same developer, but it's governed by two different homeowners associations, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ayers. Are there any other questions of the applicant by the board? I would like to just follow up on the question. I believe Mr. Ron asked for clarification. You had mentioned that the deck without the height, without the step down, would be in line with the windows. Could you clarify that response?
Yeah, so if you look at, I don't know if I have an actual picture of it, but can I point to this? Is that okay?
Just let's see if we can get on the same page.
So that's figure 14. And of your packet, that is page 45.
45, okay.
So right here, there's a window that extends down more than the floor level because it's where the stairs come up. So the window, it's a window by the stairs. So you would have deck across that window.
There's not an existing deck there now across that?
No. But, yeah, no, there's not.
So, okay, and again, just for my clarification, if we go off of, okay, so page 46 of the staff packet has the existing deck, and it stops there.
Correct.
Where it says 5.18. So that extending it as you've proposed, that's the reason for dropping it down then.
Correct, because of the post and beam, the change to the post and beam construction.
Okay. Thank you. Are there, yes, Mr. Vig?
So this is the first time I'd heard about a stairway that's there. Is that right? There's a stairway that goes from the deck down to the ground?
No, it's on the inside of the house.
Oh, okay. And the proposed deck, I think, is what, Ms. Dole was asking about, there's no stairway from the proposed deck down to the ground either.
No, no.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions of staff? I mean, not of staff, of the petitioner, I apologize.
No.
And, okay, Ms. Schultz, last question. Unit 3, are you aware, is the deck that's shown on page 46 of the staff packet, is that the existing rear deck on Unit 3, to your knowledge?
I believe so,
Okay.
but I don't really know.
Sure. Okay. Are there any other questions? Does staff have any questions of the applicant?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. If not, we will open the hearing for public testimony. So if you have a seat, we'll open the hearing. If there's anyone from the public wishing to testify, could you state and spell your name for the record, please?
My name is Bonnie Swanson, Bonnie Swanson.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. You have 3 minutes.
I'm here to support Kirsty. I'm the president of the Buccaneer Condo Association, and I strongly support her deck addition. She is the only, when the condos were first formed in '79, they all had decks. Well, 5 of the 6 of them had little balconies her size, and through the years everyone has expanded the deck, and as far as I know, nobody got a permit. I mean, everyone moved in and they were already done, but people just created these decks, and now we all have large, beautiful decks with a view to the south, except for Kirsty. So I think it would greatly enhance the tax value of our properties. And another point I was going to make is that Kirsty could have just put on the deck like everyone else did in the past, but she chose to do the right thing and come before the board and try to get a variance. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Ms. Swanson. Are there any questions of Ms. Swanson? Mr. Ayers.
To the chair, Ms. Swanson. You're the president of the association. Does the association own all Block 1 there, lots 10, 11, lots 5, 6, and 7 to the south? No.
No, that's a different condo association. We are the Buccaneer Condo Association. I think theirs is the Bootlegger Cove Condo Association.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions of Ms. Swanson? Thank you. Oh, excuse me, Ms. Swanson. Ms. Dole.
Does the homeowners association approve the other deck expansions?
No one, there were no meeting minutes that addressed that question.
Okay. I was just wondering about the setbacks, but sounds like you would not know. So,
Yeah.
so there are different options and different setbacks for different units. So.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Swanson.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public wishing to testify? Anyone at all? Seeing and hearing no one, the public testimony is closed. Does staff have any rebuttal?
No, I don't.
Ms. Schultz, Do you have any rebuttal? She's indicated she does not. With that, the matter rests with the board. Could I have a positive motion from the board member, please? Yes, Ms. McKay.
In the case of 2015-0111, I move that we grant a variance from AMC 2140-040G3 to allow a second-story cantilever deck to encroach 6.6 feet into the 10-foot rear yard setback, subject to conditions 1 through 4 on page 6 of the staff packet.
Thank you, Ms. McKay. Could I have a second to that motion, please? Yes, Mr. Vig, you've indicated you'd second that motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mr. Vig. Ms. McKay, would you speak to your motion, please?
I'm going to support my motion for standard number 1, that the properties, or that this lot that is adjacent to West Ashland Lagoon, which creates unique weather patterns in the area, odd shape of the lot, and the fact that there's a large sewer easement running through it, constitute exceptional physical circumstances, that standard 2 is met, the odd shape of the lot, the location of the sewer easement, and the property owners wish to correct the design flaw of the original deck that has rotted and caused damage to the home. You see that there's a safety issue there as well, that the strict application of the code would create an undue hardship, that the original design, standard number 3, that the original design flaw with the original deck created a structural and safety issue, and so that the need for this variance is not self-imposed, that the standard number 4 is met, the variance will not adversely affect the use of the adjacent property owners. They've indicated that they support it, as well as the condo association, and that it will only increase the value of the properties. Standard number 5 is met. It doesn't change the character of the R2D zoning district. Standard number 6, no adverse effects are anticipated if the variance is approved. Standard number 7, the variance is not overly obtrusive. The adjoining properties are good distance away, 18 and 40 feet respectively, and that would allow this homeowner to have parity with the other decks within the development. Even looking at the as-built of the 2 properties on her lot, it looks like her deck will now be similar size to the one in the other unit. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. McKay. Mr. Vig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with Ms. McKay's findings, and I do believe in the case of standard number 2 that strict application of the code would create an exceptional or undue hardship. The resulting deck would be so small as to be essentially unusable and in previous cases before our board, we've found value in having adequate landings and areas for egress in the event of a fire and things like that. There is no stairway in this case, but nevertheless, I think there is an advantage or a benefit for a safety purpose. And again, I'll just echo Ms. McKay's findings on the other standards.
Thank you, Mr. Vig. Are there comments from other board members? Yes, Mr. Ron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fellow board members, appreciate the comments and findings of fact from both board members, McKay and Vig. I do intend to support the motion. I appreciate the diligence that the petitioner has brought forward to this board and the well-structured argument that's laid out. For the record, I would like to state that each case is evaluated on its own merits. While we did hear a lot about precedent, I would like my comments contexted with respect to this case itself. That's not to say precedent doesn't weigh in a decision, but again, the circumstances as found with respect to this case are the reasons by which I'm supporting the variance. I do have a point of clarification that I'm not sure quite how to attack with respect to the condition by the department for letters of non-objection, which appear to have been provided by the petitioner, but have a question with respect to dates and as-belts referenced therein. Maybe something for the petitioner to work with the department to ensure that that condition is in fact met. Starting on page 40 of the staff packet, seeing a letter from GCI, page 41 NSTAR, page 42 MLNP, with those letters dated 2014. The MLNP letter referencing an as-belt that was provided by Kirsten Schultz, and the as-belts that have been presented to the board and as part of the staff packet dated 2015. So would want to ensure clarity with respect to the letters of non-objection and the deck that we're approving a variance for.
Thank you, Mr. Ron. Were you looking to make a condition, or was that just a statement for the record?
A statement for the record and to raise awareness with both the petitioner and the department with respect to that condition.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, or excuse me, are there other comments of the board members? Seeing none, please vote. That motion passes by a vote of 7-0. I do need to read for the record, every final decision of the board shall clearly state on its face it is a final decision with respect to all issues involved in the case, and that the parties have 30 days from the date of mailing or other distribution of the decision to file an appeal to the Superior Court. That is our last case this evening. Next item on the agenda, reports. I have nothing to report. The staff have any indication on the number of cases at next month's meeting?
Oh.
Sorry. Oh, that's what you gave me. I lost it. I was just sending an easy question your way to see if you could answer that. So we have one case? We have one case next month. Okay. Are there any other comments by board members? Does any board member know at this time if they will not be here next month? Okay. Ms. Dole?
question for staff, not to be, I don't know that you can answer it, but I guess I would like to hear.
Could you speak into the mic again? And I'm sorry, it's just hard to get this recorded.
Certainly, sorry about that. I guess, look, I would appreciate any guidance there is on the, what can be in the, I guess, the conditions. I noticed that this last case had conditions relating to resolving, let me find it what it was, issue about a elevation certificate with watershed management services, and also resolving a deck encroachment into the utility easement. And we had an issue come up in the prior, just today in the first public hearing relating to condition. And so if there's any guidance that the division or department can provide me, I would greatly appreciate it. At a future meeting would be fine.
Okay, Ms. Doyle, are you asking what recourse or how the petitioner goes about satisfying those two conditions?
No, I'm asking in terms of the, I guess, what in general, more generally, what can, I guess, I'm not sure if it's approach or limitations or what, but limits or just anything we should be aware of in considering whatever conditions are put into recommendations that are related to other, not directly related to, say, what the matter at issue, like a setback variance.
Ms. Doyle, maybe I can answer your question now, but when we receive these variance applications, they have to turn in about 35 copies. We take those copies and we reserve 8 or 9 for the boards and commissions. This is through all the applications and all the boards we serve. It's pretty much the same process. And the remaining copies we send out to all the reviewing agencies for comment. And they all comment in accordance with whatever their department is and what they see are issues that they comment on and then bring forward and submit, as you see in your packet. That's after they've gotten a copy of the application. The same thing the board sees. They look through that packet, and then from their own area of expertise, they comment on it. We include those in the packet, and those that we deem to be useful, valid, we include and make those conditions. Does that help?
That helps, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? My last one really quickly. I appreciate the board's patience. I made a somewhat simple resolution difficult on that first case. So, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Ms. Dole, Ms. Eicher, you seconded. Any objection? We are adjourned.